Now, their return follows weeks of uncertainty after Israeli forces intercept their vessel in international waters. Now, the group, made up of activists from several non-governmental organizations, was part of a wider humanitarian mission. They were briefly detained and questioned before being deported from Israel. The Malaysians later traveled to Istanbul, where they coordinated their return home with assistance from Malaysian diplomatic missions. Family members, NGO representatives, and supporters gathered at the KLIA arrival hall to welcome them home. Now, despite being unable to deliver their aid, the group believed the effort succeeded in drawing global attention to Gaza's suffering. A solidarity gathering was scheduled at Axiata Arena in Bukit Jalil tomorrow evening. The volunteers were expected to share their experiences and reaffirm Malaysia's ongoing support for the Palestinian cause. United States President Donald Trump says he is confident that a peace deal for Gaza can be achieved. He states that Hamas has begun accepting several key conditions as talks with Israel get underway.
Trump noted that there were clear limits to what the US would agree to, adding that if certain requirements were not met, the deal would not move forward. Trump expressed optimism about reaching an agreement as delegations from Hamas and Israel began indirect negotiations in Egypt, guided by his 20-point peace plan. He described the current progress as something that had been out of reach for many years and said he believed a deal was now within sight. Trump confirmed that a Gaza peace agreement was likely and dismissed reports suggesting he had criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He emphasized that Netanyahu had been constructive and supportive throughout the talks.
2 years after the Hamas-led assault on southern Israel ignites one of the deadliest and longest wars in recent Middle Eastern history. Today, Israelis and Palestinians mark the anniversary of October 7 under vastly different circumstances, one in mourning, the other under siege.
Across Israel, families gathered to remember the 1,200 people killed in the 2023 attacks, when Hamas fighters stormed border communities and a desert music festival, abducting 251 hostages into Gaza. Ceremonies were held in Tel Aviv and at the Nova Music Festival site, where more than 370 were killed. In Gaza, there were no official memorials, only rubble, displacement and loss. According to Gaza's health ministry, over 67 Palestinians have been killed since Israel's military campaign began in October 2023, including tens of thousands of women and children. The enclave's health system has collapsed, with hospitals operating at less than 30% capacity and most residents surviving on 8 deliveries that the UN warns remain critically insufficient. Entire neighborhoods such as Shujaya, Rimal and Beit Hanun have been reduced to ruins. Electricity and clean water remain scarce, and the UN estimates more than 80% of Gaza's 2.2 million people have been displaced, many multiple times. For Palestinians, the anniversary is not a single date of tragedy, but a continuing reality of bombardment, hunger and loss. As Israel mourns its dead and Gaza buries its own, the war that began on October 7 has redrawn the region's political map, hardened public sentiment, and tested international diplomacy. Despite negotiations, airstrikes and rocket fire continue daily, the promise of peace remains overshadowed by the reality of occupation, blockade, and deep mistrust. 2 years on, October 7 is no longer just an anniversary. It is a symbol of grief, resilience, and a conflict that still shows no sign of ending.
We'll have more after the break. Stay tuned.
Huawei kembali mencuri tumpuan peminat teknologi dengan pelancaran siri Huawei Watch GT6 yang menawarkan hayat bateri sehingga 21 hari. Model Huawei GT6 dan GT6 Pro menampilkan pemantauan kesihatan dipertingkat, lebih 100 mod sukan serta ciri baharu untuk larian dan berbasikal. GT6 Pro turut dilengkapi badan alloy titanium dan kaca sapphire, sokongan mod sukan seperti golf serta fungsi ECG untuk pemantauan jantung. Bagi siri GT6 pula menyokong aplikasi harian termasuk pembayaran QR TNG, akses NFC waktu solat dan My Border Pass terus di pergelangan tangan. Perantabahan dibuka sehingga 3 Oktober dengan harga bermula RM999 dan hadiah percuma sehingga RM446. Di samping itu, Huawei turut memperkenalkan Huawei Watch Ultimate 2 dengan keupayaan selaman sehingga 150 meter. Perantabahannya juga kini dibuka sehingga 14 Oktober pada harga serendah RM3,499 dengan hadiah percuma bernilai sehingga RM1,305.
Febreze baharu dengan 2 kali wangian. Untuk wangian yang memikat setiap hari dan setiap malam. Nikmatilah wangian Febreze yang menakjubkan.
Welcome back. The 2025 Nobel Prizes have officially kicked off, with the first award for medicine presented to 3 scientists for their discoveries on peripheral immune tolerance. Announcements for physics, chemistry, literature, peace, and economics will follow until October 13th. Among the contenders for this year's Peace Prize is US President Donald Trump, who has cast himself as a peacemaker, claiming to have ended 7 wars since taking office.
Trump has received nominations from Israel, Pakistan, Cambodia, South Korea, and Republican lawmakers, though some were submitted after the deadline for the 2025 award. Speaking last week to US military leaders, Trump had highlighted his 20-point peace plan to end fighting between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. He said it would be an insult to the US if he did not win the Peace Prize. But experts say his chances are slim, given that the Norwegian Nobel Committee prioritizes lasting peace, international cooperation, and the work of institutions that strengthen those goals. Each laureate receives a gold medal, a diploma, and a cash award funded by the Nobel Foundation, with this year's prizes amounting to about $1.2 million. The prizes will be formally presented on December 10th, marking the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death in 1896.
Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te says that United States President Donald Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. He says this would be the case if Trump can persuade Chinese President Xi Jinping to abandon the use of military force against Taiwan.
The United States remains Taiwan's most important international supporter, despite the lack of formal diplomatic ties. Trump is expected to meet Xi later this month at the Asia-Pacific Leaders Summit in South Korea. He has previously argued that he should receive the same recognition given to 4 of his White House predecessors. The Nobel Peace Prize for this year is due to be announced in Norway on Friday. When asked what he would say to Trump if they met, Lai replied that he would urge the US president to closely watch Xi's actions. He warned that China has been conducting increasingly large-scale military exercises in the Taiwan Strait and expanding its presence in the East and South China Seas. Lai said China's growing military reach poses a challenge not only to Taiwan but to global stability. He explained that if China were to annex Taiwan, it would gain greater power to compete with the US and weaken the rules-based international order. Such developments, he said, would directly affect US national interests. Because Taiwan and the United States do not maintain formal diplomatic relations, Taiwanese presidents do not meet or speak directly with US presidents.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and United States President Donald Trump agreed to meet in person, following what officials described as a friendly video call on Monday. According to Brazil's government, the conversation raises hopes for improved relations between the 2 countries after decades of tension.
During the 30-minute call, Lula's office said both leaders reflected positively on their brief meeting at the United Nations last month. Trump later described the discussion on social media as productive, saying it focused on strengthening economic and trade ties. Trump indicated that further talks would take place soon, with plans for meetings in both Brazil and the US. Lula proposed holding the first meeting during this month's Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit in Malaysia and expressed his willingness to visit Washington. Despite the cordial tone, both leaders have faced disagreements in the past, particularly over the trial and conviction of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. In response to the case, Trump raised tariffs on several Brazilian exports from 10 to 50%, calling the legal proceedings politically motivated.
United States President Donald Trump announces that all medium and heavy-duty trucks imported into the country will face a 25% tariff starting on the 1st of November. The move marks a major escalation in the administration's efforts to protect American manufacturers from foreign competition.
Last month, Trump said new duties on heavy truck imports would take effect from the 1st of October, citing national security concerns. He explained that the tariffs were designed to shield U.S. companies from unfair trade practices and to strengthen domestic industry. Currently, under existing trade agreements with Japan and the European Union, the U.S. imposes a 50% tariff on light-duty vehicles. However, it remains unclear whether that rate will apply to larger models. The Trump administration also allows manufacturers to deduct the value of US-made components from tariffs on light-duty vehicles assembled in Canada and Mexico. The new measure will cover a wide range of large vehicles, including delivery trucks, garbage trucks, public utility vehicles, buses, tractor-trailers, semi-trucks, and heavy-duty vocational vehicles. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has previously urged the Commerce Department not to move forward with additional truck tariffs. It warned that the main sources of these imports, Mexico, Canada, Japan, Germany, and Finland, are close allies and partners that pose no security threat to the U.S.
The White House retracts President Donald Trump's claim that government employees are already being laid off due to the ongoing shutdown. However, it warns that job losses could occur if the standoff continues into its 7th day.
Trump said on Sunday that layoffs were happening immediately. But White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt later clarified that he was referring to furlough employees affected since Congress allowed federal funding to lapse on the 1st of October. Leavitt said the Office of Management and Budget is working with government agencies to identify staff who may face layoff if the shutdown persists. Federal workers' unions have filed lawsuits to prevent potential job cuts, arguing that such actions would violate federal law and could carry criminal penalties. This partial government shutdown, the 15th since 1981, is now set to become the 4th largest in U.S. history by Tuesday, surpassing the 6-day shutdown of 1995. The longest, lasting 35 days, took place during Trump's first term in 2018 and 2019. Essential workers, including border agents and airport security officers, continue to work without pay, while many other federal operations remain suspended. Pressure to resolve the shutdown is expected to mount next week when 1.3 million military personnel and defense staff are due to miss their first paychecks.
China's Premier Li Qiang will lead a delegation to North Korea to take part in celebrations of the ruling party's 80th anniversary this Friday. Beijing confirmed Li's visit from October 9th to 11th, saying China wants to strengthen communication and deepen partnerships with Pyongyang.
A Russian delegation led by United Russia Party chairman Dmitry Medvedev is also scheduled to attend the event. Vietnam's Communist Party chief To Lam will make his first visit to North Korea in nearly 20 years to attend the anniversary celebrations. Lam's trip comes after a visit to South Korea in August, where he was the first foreign guest hosted by President Lee Jae-myung. Last month, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un joined Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping at a military parade in Beijing, marking 80 years since Japan's defeat in World War II, in a move seen as strengthening Kim's diplomatic standing.
Now that report wraps up Awani International for tonight. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com, as well as follow us on all our social media. I'm Hafiz Marzuki. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned as we go to Berita Terkini on Global Sumut Flotilla ke Gaza with Pia and Nadia. Take it away, Pia.
Thank you Hafiz Marzuki, dan sebentar tadi Hafiz ada sampaikan bawakan perkembangan Awani International, namun pada jam ini kita kembali kepada perkembangan berita terkini Global Sumut Flotilla ke Gaza, dan ini adalah laporan pertama. Delegasi Wakil Malaysia di atas kapal Conscience Dr. Fauziah Muhammad Hassan menyeru rakyat Malaysia mengadakan himpunan sebagai tanda protes seandainya misi Freedom Flotilla Coalition FFC dipintas rejim Zionis Israel. Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Humanitarian Care Malaysia, MyCare, Kamaruzaman Syahrul Anwar, yang menyampaikan pesanan bagi pihaknya berkata, Dr. Fauziah menyeru agar perhatian dunia terus diberikan terhadap tindakan kejam rejim Zionis Israel.
Beliau juga mensarankan agar anjuran demo diadakan sehingga mereka selamat keluar dari penjara Israel agar terus sedar tentang kekejaman yang dilakukan oleh rejim Zionis.
Beliau berkata demikian semasa sesi taklimat khas FFC di Kuala Lumpur pada Selasa. Dr. Fauziah turut membuat penampilan melalui video semasa sidang media tersebut, berharap agar seluruh dunia termasuk kerajaan di peringkat antarabangsa terus memberi tekanan kepada Israel supaya memberikan laluan selamat kepada misi kemanusiaan ke Gaza.
Dan kita doakan agar kita minta jugalah the world and our government and the government of the world untuk tekan buat tekanan kepada Israel